Welcome to Dialogue of Exploration.
Today we've decided to talk about dying and leaving our body.
Yes, we've been talking about death more recently because one of your friends recently passed away, and I think that lent itself to us having more conversations about death, I think, really, didn't it?
Absolutely.
And also I've had the privilege of being a kind of friend of death at a level, because from a young age I had the experience of loss in my own family, and I've had quite a lot of experience of loss in my family, but also in my work I have had the privilege, and it is an enormous privilege actually, to go to the ends of quite a few people's lives with them, and of course within that to be part of the family and with them in their loss, and also in their living beyond the death of their loved one. And I kind of see how much death is to do with love and life, and it's been over the years of a lifetime of working with people to see how death and love and life they're all part of this cycle.
All interconnected.
Yes,
Absolutely.
all interconnected.
Very much so. Yeah. And it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because I think that with life and love and being connected to somebody, with death being a possibility, it creates a fear in people to not live their lives fully, to not love, to not connect.
I think so. I think that particularly in our culture, I think that death is something that isn't really explored or talked about, and that it's quite an existential fear, and it is quite connected up with relating at the deepest level, and that when we fall in love with somebody, then actually we do know that at some stage, whether it's 50 or 60 years hence, that we are going to be parted through death. And even though that's a known thing, I think that people therefore can hold back and not experience love at its absolute fullest because of the fear of sadness that comes with the loss.
Absolutely, absolutely. Whereas actually, you know, there are cultures around the world that say, well, if you live every moment as if it was your last, you couldn't live a more full life.
And that is absolutely, I would echo that, because actually what I saw as well in the people who I was with right to the end of their lives was a kind of letting go and a being their true selves 100%, and absolutely no barriers to their connection to themselves, their loved ones, and to their dying. And I did see within that there was I don't know, something that made me really think, well, we must live like that. Because in the last few weeks of quite a few people that I've been with in their dying, they were completely themselves. There was a relationship with their loved ones that was deeper. Things were said that had never been said. I mean, this doesn't always happen, but I think sometimes people pass over and things haven't been said. But in these experiences I had, there was a deepening, and I really saw that we can live like that.
Absolutely.
We can live being our true selves with a fearlessness, with a really embracing our death. And I think, truthfully, until we really, really face our death and that we are going to die, then we don't fully live. And that they are side by side, and they are to do with love and to do with loving ourselves and loving other people and being fully living. And I think it is the separation at the human level of one another through death is so sad and agony. But it's worth daring to go for love and daring to risk that feeling that sad, because I notice we get to live again, we get to take another step. There is rebirth.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because when somebody actually does leave their body, that's it. It's final, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It's not like, I don't know, I don't know, losing a partner, or it's not like, I don't know, I can't think of another simile, but throughout life we can recover from things, but death is one of those things that actually, once that person's gone, they're gone.
I think that's it. I think it's the only thing, as you were saying, there's other things. We can lose our job, we can lose our business, we can lose our money, we can lose our, get disappointed in sport, in success on any level. We can have all sorts of things which are part of our life experience, which are incredibly hard and difficult. But parting through death is so sad. And I think that the grieving process must be so honoured, because the person doesn't come back. And whatever our beliefs, our spiritual beliefs, whatever our understanding of consciousness and the soul, or any of those beliefs we may have, actually that person's gone from our life, and our life is never the same again. This doesn't mean that our life isn't enhanced in some ways, because my sister and I, who I've mentioned before, but my mother died when I was 16 and she was 14, and that was an incredibly difficult time to lose a mother. But Rosie and I both say that we like the people we've become through watching my mother's dying, which was incredibly brave and incredibly I don't know, I saw my mother go through so much that taught me so much, and my father in the losing of the person he loved more than anyone in the whole world. And in seeing that, and us losing the person we loved more than anyone in the whole world, we like the people we've become because of that experience and the understanding we have, and and knowing death early on gave us something that we could never have had without that experience.
That's interesting, isn't it? So knowing death early on maybe took away the fear from you guys of death, or that surrounds death, because having experienced it, it's different to an anticipation of the unknown. I think that that you'll survive. I think what my experience of loss over the years has been is that the pain isn't any easier, ever. Of course.
But what you do know is that there is a process of gradual recovery, and never should be rushed. I see that with people who have experienced a loss, that there cannot be a rush, but that the person who's passed away, we have to think they'd want us to carry on. That our life, it's like we need to say hello to the person who's died and keep them in our hearts and keep them alive in that way, and there will be, our life will be different because of them having been in it, and they will live on in all the things that they knew about us and that we shared with them, and but the process of grieving mustn't be rushed, and the acknowledgement of the sadness mustn't be rushed, because it is agony, and the pain is no different. As I said, the pain of loss doesn't get better, but what I think it is knowing that there is a place beyond it where we'll live again, and where life can take on a meaning again,
of course,
and purpose again, and we can have relationship again, and we can love again.
Absolutely.
And that actually, if we've found love in that relationship, then the person can have taught us to love as well.
Absolutely. That's a very interesting point, isn't it?
I saw that with my dad, because he said that my mother had taught him about true love, and I also saw him go on and some years later find love again.
There you go. Wow.
And marry again, and he was able to love again.
Right. Wow.
And my mother said before she died, she said, "Darling, you must marry again." She was instructing him before she died.
And he obeyed.
He obeyed.
Perfect.
He obeyed.
Yay. Good man. So something you said earlier resonated with me, which was something along the lines of, until people come to terms basically with death and the fact that it's going to happen with them, then there's going to be a part of their lives actually that they're not going to be totally free, or not going to be total in their living out of. So I was thinking, okay, so how would somebody come to terms with that part of themselves that actually at some point or another, it's going to be their turn.
Apparently, the one of the Buddhist philosophies is they have a little imaginary bird on their shoulder, and every day they ask the bird, "Is this my day? And am I ready?" And maybe we should just do that. Maybe we should just say, "Is this my day? And am I ready?"
Yeah.
Because there's lots of exercises that can be quite valuable. I did some kind of death work, for want of a better word, where I wrote my eulogy. That can be quite a powerful exercise.
Interesting.
To write your eulogy and see whether you actually are living it.
Right.
And see whether all the things you'd like to be said about you when you die, you're actually living.
Ah, that's a very good point.
And that's quite a powerful thing to do. And to actually think, say we were going to die say this was the last year of our life, say this time next year we're not here, are we living as we want to live? You know, if we really, because this happens, I mean, the work I'm in has meant that I have worked with many people who have had deaths at a young age, and, you know, 30s, in their 30s, their 40s, 50s or 60s, but I mean, you know, time before we'd think we were going to die. And I've also, of course, worked with people grieving the loss of people who have gone, and sometimes gone quickly, that, you know, died when a child's death, or the death of a child, or death of somebody who was, you know, it's unexpected, it was an accident, or there was a sudden illness, or all sorts of things, and it's just tragic, 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 absolute agony, agony. And so I suppose that we never really think it's going to happen to us. Now, because of my life, my personal life in the loss of family members, also my work has meant that I know only too well it can happen to us.
Of course.
And that in itself has lent itself to give me an orientation of thinking in that way. But I think if we, you know, are we living as we truly want? I mean, that's actually something that's quite a investigation. And if we really thought we were going to not be here in a year's time, is this how we'd be living? And what would we be doing? I don't know, what do you think? Do you have any?
I really, really like, am I ready?
Yeah.
I really like that question, because actually, if I'm not ready, why aren't I ready? What is it that I'd like to do with my life that I'm not doing now? That I'm not already experiencing, or that I'm not already
Yeah, it's also about being, isn't it? Because I can remember when I was young, and I was very much struggling with an eating disorder, and I was incredible lot of torment with this. And I can remember writing in my diary that you know, I didn't know how I was ever going to be at peace, because the torment of an eating disorder is enormous, and you're, you know, trapped in your head. And I used to write, I remember writing when I was very young, that I didn't think I was ever going to be at peace until I died. But I can remember thinking, but I don't want to die, because I want to sort this out. You know, I'm sure there's a way of being alive on this planet that is fun. And it had been fun. When I was younger, you know, a little girl and younger, it had been fun.
Of course.
And I think that actually it's about, you know, are we at ease, and are we at peace within?
That's right.
Because in a way, it would be lovely if we could be at peace within, to let go.
Absolutely. And that's an interesting point, to let go. And I think that's one of the things that's really worth noting about the actual process of dying, because in my experience, that is, well, it is part of the process. That process of absolutely letting go.
And the people who love the person who's dying letting go. Because, yeah, something that I learnt in being very closely connected to my clients. They were my clients, but I loved them, because to be that involved in, well, I love all my clients anyway, but to go through the process of somebody's death with them, and to love them deeply and connect with them emotionally,
Absolutely.
but also to let them go.
It's very important.
Yes, and actually I think that could be true love in relationship anyway, that at all the time we are loving somebody, we're letting them go,
Right.
and that we're not possessing them. And I think that being able to let the dying person go is a huge gift, and hard to do, of course.
It is, isn't it? To put your own thing aside and
Yes.
let them go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for them, then it helps them let go. But with conversation and with preparation and with an acknowledgement of the dying, I think for the dying person, they can then let go. But sometimes that isn't the case. The dying person doesn't want to address their dying. There's, and then it's not necessarily for us to go and tell somebody that that's it, because it may not be their path, and we don't know the path another treads. We don't know about each person's experience as a human journey. We just don't know it.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that. I don't think there should be any set rules or agenda or expectation about how anybody wants to handle their process of leaving their body.
No, exactly. But sorry, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, it's very interesting for me to have seen, especially recently, that letting go process, and it's back to what you were saying a bit earlier on about actually, shouldn't we live life like that in every moment?
I think that if we truly, truly do acknowledge that we are not going to be in our body, then we really start to surrender to love and living.
Absolutely.
And when I say surrender, I think it's surrender the bits that hold back.
Absolutely.
So letting go of the parts of ourselves that are in fear. Because actually it's not always fear of dying, it's fear of living.
Of course.
And fear of loving.
Absolutely.
That is what holds us from the best human experience we could have. And it's so much that, we would try and deny or distract. But when we fully acknowledge that it's a life, that there is a life cycle, then there becomes less to distract us, less to hide from, and there can be more of a joyousness in living out this life. However, to do that, all of the things we've explored with healing our childhood wounds and conscious relationship, all the kind of other dialogues of exploration that we've engaged in, those are the ways for us to clear the way to fully live.
Absolutely. So
actually maybe we aren't going to be so keen to do the work needed to be whole unless we acknowledge we're dying. Now my experience of working with people is it's often a crisis that brings them to work on themselves. So maybe it's a death of something, death of a relationship, death of a way of living as they knew it before, whether it's
loss of career, whatever. Yeah.
So maybe it's that, or loss of control, like they might be experiencing huge levels of anxiety or illness, or so actually it's often is that, or it can be loss of a person that brings them to start to do work on themselves to live fully.
Absolutely.
So I would say that the whole are interconnected in a way.
I agree with that, and we did a talk on the shadow self, and I was thinking to myself, actually part of the letting go process is to actually bring that shadow self to the fore, to allow it to clear, and that is the letting go, isn't it?
It is the letting go, yes.
That's part of the letting go,
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to get at is it's not going through life really not caring or not taking responsibility. No. Actually, it's the reverse. It is actually really acknowledging within ourselves, if this isn't going to last forever, then I really do need to.
That's right, I understand what you're saying, yes. The letting go isn't just going, right, I'm going to go out and drink and eat and be merry, although that can be part of it. But it isn't actually that, because actually you can still feel stuck and trapped and uncomfortable and unhappy.
Absolutely.
In the process of living, which means that it all isn't about freedom. Whereas actually the acknowledgement of our dying means that we would be more prepared to fully live, and fully living means becoming whole and expressing all of ourselves.
Absolutely.
So that when we die, we know who we are.
Absolutely. And wow, what a way to leave the body.
Yes.
Knowing who we are. Amazing.
It is an amazing thought, isn't it?
Because there can't be any fear in there then, can there?
No, it's just a step. I saw that in my dad, actually. I did see his surrender to death. I remember calling him, because he died 19 years ago this month, which is amazing, because it's amazing, and here we all are, you know, carrying on. But I remember calling him when I just got back from my holiday, and probably about now, because he died on the 17th of August, so I called him and I said, hello, and how are you, Daddy, and all of that, and he said, oh, I'm fine, darling, I'm fine, I'm just sitting and thinking and facing the inevitable. I went, oh, are you okay, Daddy? And he went, oh yes, no, I'm fine, darling. And I was like, oh, my dad's going to die.
So
And he did. He died 3 weeks later. And it was a step, really. He let go. It was a process. And I rang my sister, I remember, and said, Daddy's going to die. And it was a process that he just let go.
Yeah, wow.
And stepped out of his body. It was amazing, actually. It was a very, watching a death like that is a very life-enhancing experience.
I think so. Because it takes away all the, I don't know, it takes away all the fear of death,
He was ready, and he said to us he was ready.
Yeah.
Now that didn't mean there wasn't sadness, and it doesn't mean that there wasn't he may have been ready, but maybe everybody else wasn't quite.
Of course.
But so there was a sort of readying needed to happen. But there was a peace.
Yes.
And there was a peace. And I think that if we give it some thought, and we give thought to our death, then we will give thought to our living. We'll give thought to our loving, and we'll give thought to our relationships. Because actually, another thing you asked me about how we. Did you ask me how we prepare for death or how we live?
But no, it was how do we acknowledge the fact?
Death. I think it's actually in relationship too that, as we say, about becoming whole is very vital. But actually, making our peace in relationship with one another, and to do that, we have to make peace within ourselves, because our conflict in relationship with other people, there is always some growth wanting to happen, but it is going to be we're responsible for our part. If there is anything that is unresolved, then we can only do our bit. And actually, in some way, acknowledging that we're going to die will within us take us towards really wanting to work to harmony in relationship with others.
Absolutely.
I think that again, that's a bit general, but tend to forget that we're going to die. So when there's conflict, now that doesn't mean that we don't acknowledge if there is conflict, and that we need to work for the growth in that conflict. So we are having a human journey, so there is going to be conflict, disappointment, arguments, frustrations, all of these things, but it brings us back again, as we said, to the responsibility that what is important is that it's for us to work to fully live and fully heal the wounds from our past, fully acknowledge the work we must do to live this life to its fullest, so that we're ready to die.
Absolutely. And I think it's a really good point you've made there, because the awareness of the fact that we are going to die puts things into a perspective, doesn't it?
I think it will make us live every moment.
Exactly. And if someone does press our buttons and we need to work on that, it's not going to seem so important. It's not going to be this big reaction.
No.
Because actually...
Yeah. We recognise that we have to do a bit of work.
Absolutely.
We think, oh, that's touched our button, so we might have to do a bit of work. But actually, it will bring us to the moment. It brings us to that mindfulness of there is no past, there is no future, we have only now.
That's right.
And if we live now, then life, death and love are in that stream.
Absolutely.
And that we are able to be really being who we were meant to be and having the relationships we're capable of.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that's such an important thing, isn't it? To have the relationships that we are truly capable of. Yeah. So I think just before we round up, what about the grieving process? I mean, that could be a dialogue of exploration, talk, all of its own, but the best way to handle grieving?
I think that, of course, to actually fully give yourself the space for it. I think that, and I speak from having not, as a teenager, we didn't have the space,
right,
because of the upbringing that we had and the thought that went into that we had to carry on. And I think that having been privileged again to be part of people's grieving processes, that it absolutely needs the space to completely and utterly acknowledge the desperate sadness. And there can be, as we know, there's lots of books written which people can find written on different stages of grieving, of stages of huge anger towards the person who's left us. I mean, I was like that with my mum. It's like, why have you left me?
Yeah.
Non-acceptance, just literally can't believe that person's gone, cannot believe it. Coming to hope that there will be something in the future, to complete despair, complete lack of energy just gone, of any desire to live our own lives. And gradually there can come a place of acceptance and being able to take that step in our lives. But it's actually giving the space for all these different emotions and all these different feelings. And different people will feel different things. As I say, there are lots of books written that say that these stages of grief, but to be quite honest, often we do go through in quite a standard way, but actually we might not.
Right.
And my observation of people who grieve fully and give themselves the space to literally express and emote, and the weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth of other cultures is such a vital thing that actually, if we did more of it, gets out of the body.
That's it.
And it it gets out of the body. But it's the space. I would say absolutely giving the space and the support, allowing the support of other people and the love of other people to help us in that time. And also, the time immediately after death is really quite busy, and there's a lot of people around. There's a funeral to be organised, there's lots of things to be done, and people often gather around quite a lot at that immediate time because it's such a shock, and even a death that's been expected is a shock. But what's important is to recognise that the grieving can actually get worse and you miss the person more.
Yeah,
and that it isn't that, they should be okay now, 6 months on. Actually, what can be happening is the person's missing the person more.
Right.
And we're grieving also the vision of the future that we were expecting. And that's, the person's gone, but also if we were anticipating building a future with this person, having grandchildren with this person, going on holidays, we had plans with this person, and then we're grieving the lost vision too.
Of course. That's very interesting. So it's not only the grieving from an emotional sort of point of view,
Yes.
it's also the expectations that were in place around the relationship.
So there's lots of things that we wouldn't necessarily have anticipated, and also everything can change. We're not part of, if it's a partner that we've lost, then we're not part of a couple anymore. It changes the whole dynamic in social situations. There's such a lot that's different.
Yeah.
So adjusting to that change is also part of the grieving process. But that pain in the body, the pain in the heart, it can be such a visceral pain that no one can necessarily be prepared for. And of course, recognising that people grieve in different ways and have different ways of dealing with it, and that can be challenging in relationship, if a couple have lost somebody that they both love, and people will have different ways of managing their grief or handling their grief or expressing their grief, so that there's no set way, but it does need space.
So that's interesting. So what you're saying is people grieve in different ways. There's no, as you've said, no set way. Just give yourself the space to fully feel it.
Yeah.
And to really let it clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is a clearing, isn't it? It's actually got to come out of the body.
Yes.
Grief.
And sometimes it will keep popping up over the years. We can feel that we're completely and utterly, over, or if you get over it and you get over it, what you do is you keep going forward and you live your life without the person, and you find happiness in life and you find more relationships. But what can happen is something unexpected can trigger an expression of the grief that you didn't know was still in you. You can watch a film or go to another funeral of somebody else, or suddenly remember something, and something will emerge that you hadn't got out of your body.
Absolutely.
So it can go on for years and years and years, but that doesn't mean you're not going forward with it.
Yeah. Of course it doesn't, absolutely.
I remember reading in a novel, actually, the phrase that grief is love turned into endless missing.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, and I remember reading that and thinking, oh yeah, that's it.
Grief
And
is, that's lovely. Grief is love turned into endless missing.
Yeah.
Wow. I think that's a great place to end. Don't you?
I do.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.